I wanted to do was tell him how he makes me feel.
Well, why don't you sing him a song?
What a great idea. Signing my hunka English Lynne.
Darci Lynne became famous before she was old enough to understand what fame really costs. After winning America's Got Talent, she grew up in front of millions while carrying pressures few people ever saw. Anxiety, exhaustion, and heartbreaking moments that changed how she saw the spotlight. For years, people wondered if she would always remain a ventriloquist. But, after weighing risk against passion, Darci made a decision that stunned many. A decision that's about to change her career journey forever. How the world met Darci Lynne. Darci Lynne broke into the spotlight doing what she loved at an age when most kids are still figuring themselves out. Her rise was fast, public, and overwhelming. Years later, with the trophies behind her and the stages far bigger than before, she's made a decision that has caught many off guard. Darci Lynne Farmer was born on October 12, 2004, in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. She was raised in a supportive family environment where creativity wasn't treated as a distraction, but as something worth encouraging. From an early age, she loved music, but her turning point came after watching Terry Fator, the ventriloquist who won America's Got Talent in its second season. What struck Darci wasn't just the comedy or the puppets. It was the idea that you could perform, sing, and still create distance between yourself and the audience through a character. Ventriloquism gave her a way to be bold without feeling exposed. In 2014, Darci began practicing seriously. That same year, she performed publicly for the first time with a puppet at a local talent contest. She won the competition, and more importantly, she realized she had found something that fit her. After that win, doors started opening. Darci began receiving coaching from experienced ventriloquists and mentors who helped her sharpen both her technical skills and her stage presence. She learned how to control her voice, animate characters, and balance humor with music. Between 2014 and 2016, Darci competed in multiple local and national talent competitions. Each performance added confidence. Each win reinforced that this wasn't a phase. She was building something. Her routines became tighter, her timing improved, and her ability to sing clearly while keeping her mouth closed became more impressive each time. In 2016, Darci appeared on Little Big Shots. The show gave her a national audience and introduced millions of viewers to what made her different. She wasn't just a ventriloquist. She wasn't just a singer. She was doing both at once, effortlessly, and without forcing attention onto herself. What stood out was how natural it all felt. The puppets weren't props, they were extensions of her personality. The singing wasn't a trick, it was strong, controlled, and confident. Viewers noticed that combination immediately. Singing well while ventriloquizing is rare at any age. Doing it as a preteen with humor and composure was something else entirely. Darci wasn't mimicking anyone. She was blending comedy, ventriloquism, and real vocal ability into a single performance style that didn't rely on gimmicks. By the time her television appearances ended, the pattern was clear. Fame was catching up to Darci. But what the world didn't know yet was how fast everything was about to change. Because the next stage didn't just introduce Darci Lynne to a bigger audience. It put her on the largest stage of her life and turned a talented, shy teenager into a household name almost overnight. Darci's America's Got Talent journey. By the time Darci Lynne stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, she was only 12 years old. There was no dramatic buildup around her entrance, just a quiet confidence and a puppet tucked under her arm. Her audition aired on May 30th, 2017. Darci introduced herself simply, then brought out her puppet, Petunia. What followed immediately shifted the room. She sang Summertime from Porgy and Bess with full control, range, and tone, all while ventriloquizing. The audience reaction came fast. The judges leaned forward. Within seconds, it was clear they weren't watching a typical kid audition. The surprise wasn't just that she could sing. It was how well she sang. Strong vocals, clean phrasing, no visible strain. Combined with precise ventriloquism, it felt effortless. By the time she finished, the theater was already on its feet. The judges' reactions reflected that shock. Compliments weren't framed around her age alone. They focused on skill, timing, musicality. Mel B reached for the golden buzzer, and Darci was sent straight to the live shows. From that moment on, expectations changed. In the quarterfinals, Darci performed Who's Lovin' You with her puppet Oscar. The song choice was deliberate. It required emotional control and vocal strength. Again, she delivered without leaning on gimmicks. The ventriloquism enhanced the performance rather than distracting from it. Judges praised her growth and control, noting that she wasn't repeating the audition but expanding it. In the semifinals, Darci took another step forward. She sang You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman alongside her puppet Edna. The performance showed range, both vocally and emotionally. It also showed confidence. By this point, she wasn't just impressing people. She was setting a standard for herself. Online, her performances began spreading rapidly. Clips were shared across platforms. Millions of views followed. Fans didn't just watch once. They replayed, commented, and compared her performances to seasoned professionals. For a show built on variety, Darci had become one of its anchors. For the finals, Darci chose With a Little Help from My Friends. This time, she used multiple puppets, each with a distinct personality. The performance felt complete. When the season finale aired on September 20th, 2017, the outcome reflected what viewers had been signaling all along. Darci Lynne was crowned the winner of Season 12 of America's Got Talent. NBC later stated that she received the most votes of any finale performance in the show's history at that time. This placed her win beyond sympathy or novelty. It confirmed broad support across age groups and audiences. At just 12 years old, Darci became one of the youngest winners in the show's history. She earned the $1 million prize and a headlining show in Las Vegas, opportunities rarely handed to performers so young. Her win had ripple effects beyond her own career. Ventriloquism, which many had written off as outdated, suddenly felt relevant again. Young performers began posting ventriloquism clips. Talent shows saw a renewed interest in the art form. Darci didn't invent ventriloquism, but she reintroduced it to a new generation. Almost overnight, she went from a shy kid using a puppet to manage nerves to a national figure with massive expectations. Interviews followed. Tours followed. Attention followed. What most people saw was success. What they didn't see yet was the cost of growing up that fast, under that much attention, with a spotlight that never fully turned off. The struggles behind the fame. See. Before millions of people knew her name, Darci Lynne Farmer was just a shy kid who loved music but struggled with being seen. Singing came easily when she was alone. Doing it in front of others did not. Standing on stage without protection felt overwhelming, and that anxiety showed up early in her life. Ventriloquism became her way through that fear. The puppets gave her distance. They shifted attention away from her face and placed it on characters she controlled. Through them, she could sing, joke, and perform without feeling fully exposed. Over time, that approach shaped her entire style. Confidence came first through characters, not through direct performance as herself. Long before fame arrived, she was already learning how to manage pressure in a way that worked for her. Winning America's Got Talent at age 12 pushed Darci into a world built for adults. The pace was fast: media interviews, television appearances, tour planning, contracts, expectations. All of it arrived at once without much room to adjust. While most kids her age were focused on school and friendships, Darci was navigating professional schedules and public scrutiny. With that visibility came a narrowing of identity. To the public, she was quickly labeled as the ventriloquist prodigy. That description followed her everywhere. It opened doors, but it also boxed her in. Darci had always loved singing as much as ventriloquism, and she wanted to grow as a musician and songwriter. Balancing that personal ambition with what audiences expected from her became an ongoing challenge. That pressure intensified online. As her fame grew, so did speculation. Rumors began circulating on social media questioning her health, including repeated claims that she was battling cancer. These stories spread without confirmation and took on a life of their own. Darci never publicly announced such a diagnosis, and later reporting clarified that the rumors were not based on verified information. Even so, misinformation carries its own weight. For a young performer, seeing false narratives circulate can be unsettling. Managing those rumors required involvement from her family and team. adding another layer of responsibility at an age when life was already complicated. The focus shifted at times from her work to defending her well-being against speculation she did not create. The physical demands of her craft were another challenge. As Darci grew older, her voice naturally began to change. That process happens to every singer, but for a ventriloquist, it comes with added complexity. Puppet voices, timing, and vocal placement all need adjustment. The techniques that worked at 12 do not always work the same way at 16 or 18. Adapting without losing control of the performance became part of her daily discipline. These changes pushed her to think more deliberately about longevity. The goal was no longer just to impress audiences, but to protect her voice.
One performance away from maybe winning America's Got Talent.
And expand her abilities beyond a single format. Throughout all of this, Darci continued performing, studying music, and shaping her future carefully. The image of effortless talent often hides the reality of constant adjustment. Behind the scenes, she was learning how to grow up publicly without losing control of her craft. As Darci Lynne's career accelerated, everyday routines became harder to maintain. Touring schedules and media appearances rarely lined up with a traditional school calendar. Long rehearsals, travel days, and television commitments meant she was often away from classrooms for extended periods of time. To keep up academically, Darci relied on tutors and alternative education arrangements. Lessons happened in hotel rooms, backstage areas, and wherever time allowed. Schoolwork became something she fit in between sound checks and interviews rather than a fixed part of her day. While this flexibility made her career possible, it also changed what school felt like. Learning became solitary. There were no classmates sitting beside her daily, no shared lunch breaks, and no consistent routine. Education continued, but the social side of being a teenager was harder to access. The balance between staying academically on track and fully committing to her craft was a constant negotiation. Maintaining a sense of normalcy while living an abnormal schedule required discipline and support from her family. And as her workload increased, those challenges followed her on the road. After America's Got Talent, Darci embarked on national tours that placed her in front of live audiences night after night. Touring brought excitement and opportunity, but it also introduced physical and emotional strain. Travel days were long. Sleep schedules were irregular. Rehearsals filled the hours in between performances. Performing consistently at a high level requires more than talent. It requires endurance. Each show demanded energy, vocal control, and emotional presence, regardless of fatigue. There were no shortcuts. Audiences expected the same quality every night, even when the pace became exhausting. The constant movement left little room for rest. Airports, buses, hotels, and venues blended together. While touring allowed Darci to connect with fans across the country, it also reduced personal downtime. Recovery became something she had to plan intentionally, rather than assume would happen naturally. Meet and greets added another layer to the experience. Fans wanted access, photos, and brief conversations. Darci made time for them, understanding how meaningful those moments were. At the same time, her personal safety and privacy became more important as crowds grew larger. Managing that balance was not simple. Being approachable while maintaining boundaries required guidance and careful planning. For a young performer, learning when to step back was just as important as learning how to show up. Over time, the workload reshaped how Darci approached her career. Touring wasn't just about performing anymore. It was about pacing, protecting her voice, managing energy, and staying grounded. The excitement of success was paired with the reality of sustained effort. As Darci continued navigating school, travel, and performance, another challenge emerged. But this time it went beyond scheduling and fatigue and crossed into personal safety. It was an experience that forced her and her team to take new precautions, and it marked a turning point in how she moved through the world. The stalking case that shook her D. For most of her career, Darci Lynne's challenges came from the pressures of performance, travel, and growing up in public. However, in May 2024, that changed. What happened crossed a line from fan attention into something far more serious, and it forced a sharp shift in how Darci's safety was handled. The man at the center of the case was José Thierry Maurice Riba, a 60-year-old man from France. According to police records, Riba admitted that he traveled to the United States on May 1, 2024, with a single purpose: to meet Darci Lynne. This was not a spontaneous decision. Court documents later showed that he had spent more than $10,000 gathering information about her whereabouts, movements, and schedule. Investigators said he actively tracked where she would be and planned his trip around her appearances. Ryba flew from France to Oklahoma, arriving in early May. At that point, Darci was scheduled to perform locally. On May 2, 2024, Darci performed at Riverwind Casino in Norman, Oklahoma. During that event, Ryba was seen in the audience. Witnesses later reported that he took photos and left behind a red gift bag intended for her. At the time, the behavior raised concern, but the full scope of his intentions was not yet clear. 2 days later, the situation escalated. On May 4, 2024, Oklahoma City police were dispatched to Darci's home after her father called 911. He reported a suspicious man attempting to enter their gated community. The call was treated seriously due to Darci's public profile and recent activity surrounding her appearances. By May 5th, police confirmed that Ryba had shown up at Darci's residence attempting to meet her. This was no longer a public venue or a controlled environment. It was her home. Law enforcement intervened and Ryba was taken into custody by Oklahoma City police. He was booked into the Oklahoma County Jail, and the severity of the situation became clear almost immediately. His bond was set at $1 million, reflecting the level of concern tied to his actions and stated intent. Police affidavits and court filings detailed his travel, spending, and admissions, confirming that the encounter was not accidental or misunderstood. For Darci and her family, the incident was deeply unsettling. Public performances come with security measures, home does not. The realization that someone had crossed international borders, spent significant money, and arrived at her doorstep stripped away any sense that this was harmless fan behavior. The case also highlighted a broader reality faced by young performers with large online followings. Visibility can blur boundaries. Information that feels harmless when shared publicly can be misused by the wrong person. In Darci's case, investigators concluded that Ryba used publicly available details and persistent tracking to narrow in on her location. Law enforcement treated the matter with urgency, and the arrest prevented any further contact. Still, the emotional impact lingered. Safety planning became more detailed. Her public appearances were reassessed. The line between performer and private individual became more carefully guarded. For Darci, this moment marked a clear shift. Fame had always brought pressure, but now it carried a different kind of risk. Trust, access, and openness had to be rethought. The incident served as a reminder that success often demands protections people rarely see. In the days that followed, her family took a more active role in managing not just her schedule, but also her environment. Decisions were no longer only about her career growth. They were about safety, stability, and long-term well-being. Her parents planned for her career. From the beginning, Darci Lynne's career was never treated like a sprint. While the public focused on her talent and fast rise, her parents were focused on something else entirely, making sure success didn't come at the cost of her well-being. Clark and Misty Farmer have consistently described their role in her life as supportive but protective. They wanted Darci to enjoy performing and to take advantage of the opportunities in front of her. But they were also aware of how quickly fame can overwhelm young performers. From their perspective, talent needed boundaries, not pressure. That mindset shaped every major decision. After Darci won America's Got Talent, multiple offers came quickly. Appearances, tours, interviews, and long-term opportunities all landed at once. Instead of saying yes to everything, her parents slowed the pace. They were careful about overexposure and selective about what Darci took on. Their goal was not to keep her hidden, but to keep her healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically. A big part of that protection involved her education. Even while touring and performing, Clark and Misty insisted that Darci stay on track academically. School was not treated as optional or secondary. Her mother, in particular, spoke openly about the importance of keeping education a priority alongside her artistic work. Tutors, alternative schooling arrangements, and flexible learning schedules were used to make sure Darci didn't fall behind. They made things clear. Performing was important, but it wasn't everything. That balance mattered because it gave Darci a sense of structure when her life was anything but normal. While her schedule looked different from most teenagers, Education provided continuity. It also reinforced the idea that her identity didn't begin and end on stage. Another key part of her parents' plan was choice. Clark and Misty have said repeatedly that they do not want to dictate Darci's future. They encourage exploration, not pressure. Whether she leans toward ventriloquism, singing, acting, or something else entirely, they've made it clear that the final decision belongs to her. That approach is intentional. Instead of locking her into one path, they've allowed room for growth and change. Darci has been free to experiment with different forms of performance without being boxed into the role that first made her famous. If her interests evolve, her parents want her career to evolve with them. This flexibility also helps prevent burnout. When a young performer feels trapped by expectations, creativity suffers. By keeping options open, Darci's parents reduced the sense that she had to keep proving herself in the same way forever. Underlying all of these decisions are family values. Clark and Misty often talk about grounding Darci in faith, family, and humility. Fame, they remind her, is temporary. Character is not. Staying connected to family life, maintaining perspective, and remembering who she was before the spotlight are things they actively reinforce. That grounding became especially important after moments of stress and danger, including the stalking incident. Safety concerns reinforced why boundaries mattered and why protecting Darci's private life was just as important as building her public career. At home, Darci is not treated like a brand or a headline. She's treated like a daughter. That distinction shapes how decisions are made and how success is measured. Achievements are celebrated, but they don't override her health, safety, or personal growth. Over time, this approach created a noticeable difference in how Darci handled fame. She didn't rush to reinvent herself for attention. She didn't cling to childhood success out of fear of losing relevance. Instead, she moved carefully, supported by parents who understood both the opportunities and the risks. As Darci grew older, that support system allowed her to reflect more clearly on what she wanted. Not what audiences expected, not what industry pressures suggested, but what felt right for her. And eventually, that clarity led to a decision, one that confirmed what many people had suspected for years. Darci confirms the suspicions. For years, one question followed Darci Lynne quietly. Was ventriloquism ever meant to be her final destination? It wasn't a question raised by critics, but by people who had been listening closely since the beginning. Even when she performed behind puppets and leaned into comedy, her singing always stood out. The voice never felt like a supporting feature. It felt like the core. After her America's Got Talent win in 2017, that question only grew louder. The fans could hear it. Her strong vocal control, emotional range, and musical instincts that went far beyond what a novelty act required. Even behind characters, her singing sounded complete, confident, and capable of standing on its own. Darci never rushed to confirm that suspicion. Instead, she let time do the work. In interviews over the years, she spoke openly about her love for singing and songwriting. These comments were never framed as rejection of ventriloquism, but they hinted at something broader. Music wasn't a side skill. It was personal. It mattered to her in a way that suggested long-term intention, not just curiosity. Those hints became clearer during the pandemic. Like many artists, Darci found herself with time she hadn't had before. Touring slowed, schedules paused. In that quiet stretch, she turned inward creatively. During quarantine, she began writing music seriously, not as an experiment, but as a discipline. In an interview with People, she described becoming super passionate about it, a phrase that marked a shift from casual interest to commitment. Songwriting gave her something ventriloquism never fully could. It allowed her to speak directly, without a character filter. The process helped her explore her own voice, both literally and creatively. It wasn't about abandoning what made her famous. It was about expanding into who she was becoming. By the time the world reopened, the direction was already taking shape. In 2024, Darci released her debut single, Someone Wake Me Up. The song was described by Darci as hopeful, but also kind of cheeky, a description that matched her personality rather than a marketing strategy. This release confirmed what had been building quietly for years. But it was not a one-off experiment. Around the release, Darci spoke more clearly about her intentions. She confirmed that she had been writing songs for years and felt ready to share her voice outside the framework of ventriloquism. She wasn't walking away from her past, just stepping forward with it. Darci leaned into country and pop influences, drawing from her Oklahoma roots. The sound felt natural rather than forced, shaped by storytelling rather than spectacle. Listeners who followed her journey recognized the consistency. This wasn't a reinvention, it was a reveal. At the same time, Darci didn't limit herself to music alone. Alongside songwriting and recording, she began exploring acting opportunities. This wasn't a pivot away from performance, but another way to grow. Acting allowed her to develop presence without relying on stage routines, adding another layer to her skill set. Her live performances reflected this transition. Post-America's Got Talent tours still featured her puppets, but over time, solo singing segments became more prominent. These moments weren't treated as side notes. They were intentional. Audiences were given space to hear Darci without characters, without layers, and without novelty framing. Each tour subtly shifted the balance. By 2023 and into 2024, Darci began emphasizing original music more clearly in how she talked about herself. She has positioned herself as a singer-songwriter rather than simply a variety act. Still, she didn't abandon ventriloquism. Instead, Darci embraced a multi-hyphenate identity. She balanced ventriloquism, singing, and acting, refusing to let any single label define her entirely. That balance allowed her to honor the craft that launched her career while making room for what came next. Media outlets took notice. Publications focused on country music began paying closer attention to her releases. Country Evolution described her as a multifaceted performer, highlighting her ability to move between formats without losing authenticity. As expected, the fans responded with enthusiasm. Longtime supporters saw her music as the fulfillment of something they had sensed early on. To them, Darci stepping into songwriting wasn't surprising. It felt earned. The courage to evolve publicly, especially after achieving massive success so young, resonated deeply. Yet not everyone believed the transition would be easy. Industry voices acknowledged the challenge of breaking free from a ventriloquist identity. Being known for one thing can make growth harder, especially because expectations follow closely and comparisons linger. Darci didn't dismiss that reality. She simply chose not to let it stop her. Rather than rushing to erase her past, she integrated it. Her career didn't fracture, it was layered. Each new step built on the last. That approach reduced risk while preserving authenticity. It also made the transition feel honest, not forced. Today, Darci Lynne stands in a different place than she did at 12. She's no longer a prodigy navigating sudden fame. She's an artist shaping her path deliberately. What she confirmed wasn't a departure from who she was, it was a continuation. And in many ways, it was exactly where the story was always headed. Was stepping into music the smartest move Darci Lynne could make, or the biggest risk of her career so far? Tell us in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.